we've just been discussing, Chad. And so we went through a defensive team intention, and then what could potentially be the individual intentions within that team intention defending. The defensive team intention was to win the ball early with horizontal pressing. And we added in close the center. And that's what the team intention was. And now we had the coaches, as Mike had a PowerPoint, and they began to collaborate with one another on what could the possibility be of those individual intentions within winning the ball early and horizontal pressing. And we went through that with them. And so what we thought we would do this evening is something similar within the attack, those individual intentions. So I don't know, Mike, did you bring up that PowerPoint again, or?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Okay.
See all that? You guys can see that?
You guys can all see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So this just looks at it from the opposite end. And I think Will is on with us too, so it doesn't necessarily apply to 4v4, but the process of doing this would all be the same. And the messages here kind of disregard that, because as Bill and I talked throughout the day today and then earlier this evening, thinking about if you are now started to think about the defending team intention, and then because the defending team intention is what they're doing as a team. That's the what. How to achieve the team intention is their individual intentions. So you began on Monday night thinking about what those individual intentions would be if the ball was played over to that player, and that maybe jogs some memory or activates some thinking from some of you guys from Monday. So kind of taking it from a different perspective tonight, your goalkeeper has the ball, and there's the goalkeeper down at the bottom, and the majority of the coaches that are on said they play 9v9 and they set their team up in a 4-1-4-3-1 formation. And just as you have defending individual intentions, you also have attacking individual intentions, because the team intention on the attacking side, as you guys have said, is move the ball. Once you win it, move the ball from one side, I'll just say one side of the circle, to the other. And the reason you do that is for the players to create or obtain more space to then get in behind the opponent. So some of those players from those powerhouse evenings back in the winter kind of phrased it as switch to get behind. That's how they phrase it, switch to get behind. So if the ball is at the goalkeeper, and you can think of a number of different situations that it may happen, but we'll just start from the goalkeeper. Where would you want these players to be? Because they each have an individual intention. Now they have it. Goal kick. Where do you want those players to be?
It's a goal kick.
Well, we can do one of and here's, as I'm thinking about this may be a better way to do it, because this situation may happen more frequently. This player has the ball, and let's just say, you guys can see all of this, correct?
Yep.
All right. Let's just say let's make it even clearer. She's going to pass the dare down to red 7, but blue number 3 steps in and intercepts it. So now, and I'm going to move the ball down there. Now, blue number 3 has the ball. However she got it is however she got it. She kicked it away, she intercepted it, but blue 3 now has the ball. And she's sitting right there. So blue 3 wins the ball. You have it now. There was your defending positions, right? That we talked about on Monday when red number 2 had it. Everything worked the way you wanted it to. Red number 2 passes it down the line. Blue number 3 intercepts it. And now what?
Well, we need to transition into offense, right?
Okay.
And our goal is going to be to switch the field at this point.
Yep.
So for me, I'm going to say 4 needs to drop back to be an option for a back pass.
Okay. So I'm just gonna hold on. I'm gonna duplicate this and I'll send this to you later. So you said 4 goes backwards. What would be her individual intention that she's looking to achieve then? What would she be doing in relation to number 3, her teammate?
She's just given an outlet.
She's becoming a passing option. And
Yep.
What did she do for herself? She created space for herself.
Right.
To be a passing option.
Yep.
Okay.
So our right wing back, which is number 2, we have 2 2s. But for me, that player needs to start working their way to the right.
How far do you, and this is
Probably-
ideal, I get that, but how far
Right.
would you like her to go?
I'd say to the top of the 18-yard box.
Yeah, I would say to the, yeah.
Do you want her there? Do you want her higher? Do you want her lower? And again, I understand this is ideal, somewhat general in nature, but it at least is giving you where would she be at the moment in relation to her teammate and red number 11? Where do you want her?
Yeah, so for me, 2, our center back is going to drop more central also to kind of cover that. What if 9 would happen to steal the ball and then give it to 11? So we still have coverage on 11, even though we're attacking at this point, right?
Okay, so where,
So 2 would drop almost horizontal with 4. So I'm looking at, and I would go to the right with 2. I'm looking more of if 3 ends up playing the ball back to 4, 4 needs him to swing that ball, swings it to this 2 that you just moved, and then swings it to the other 2 on the other side of the field, which
Okay.
gives us a switching option there.
so she's won the ball. You're fine with her, and there's no, I'm not saying it's wrong or it's
Yep.
right. Do you want her there? Do you want her higher up? Or do you
For
want her
now,
here?
for now, there is fine
Okay,
for me, you know. And then so then I have 10 as an option. I mean, 10's kind of okay where she's at. But I think 8 has to get on the other side of the circle. I don't know that I want to move much anybody else at this point, because now 3 has options of 7, 10, 4, right? She's got 3 passing options,
okay,
and whichever way we go is a decent option. I'd like her to go to 10. I mean, really, heck, if she can go to 7, let's go to 7. And then where 3 plays the ball is going to make everybody else move in conjunction with that, right? So, I mean, if 3 plays to 7, now 8's got to push up. 2's really got to push up. Our right wing back's really got to step up into the play and get out wide.
Okay, let's
So
let's rewind it just for a minute, Dan.
Yep.
So I'm just gonna take and move these players back the way that they did look, which was this. This is how they did look.
Right.
This, let me move her back there. This is how you want them to look. Okay, let me go back again. I just want to put this visual picture in your heads. This is how they did look. Boom. We won the ball. This is how they need to look. This is how they did look. This is how they need to look. I'm repeating myself, but I'm going to do it one more time.
Yeah.
This is how they did look. This is how you want them to look. That reference is in your head. Now you are a coach and you have this individual intention defending that you want to download in their heads. And you have this individual intention when they are attacking. Does that make sense? These are the 2 references you want to put in the players' brains, and you want this reference not to be provoked by you going, spread out, girls, spread out, move away from each other. That doesn't do anything for them. You want this situation, as soon as 3 wins the ball, boom, to trigger and activate a action, a response, and you want that response to be this. Boom. How in the heck are we going to do that?
Repetition in practice.
Okay.
Well,
okay.
I mean, it's so if you go back to the first one, I mean, this is one of those. So you set up this situation of 3 steals the ball here, and here we are in our defensive positioning, and now it's hey, 4, where do you think you should go, or where's your best option to be an option for 3 to find some open space, and then you're talking through that of trying to get them to, you know, our right wing back to knowing that we want to switch the field when we attack. Where do you want to be to receive that switched ball? Right. And then you have to walk through this, and you're going to, just like you just went click, 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 you're going to have to do that.
Okay. Could we do it better than that? Because I agree, that's one way to do it. Is there a better way to do it? Because you said walk them to create 3 stealing the ball, and then we'll walk them through where they should be. Is there a better way to do it? And anybody else can chime in too. Is there a better way? Because what do you want to activate that response for them? What do you want to be the thing that provokes the response from this picture here to this picture there?
That we have possession.
Or that somebody stole the ball, right?
Right.
Okay. How can you design a situation in practice? And maybe design a situation is not the best way to phrase it. How can you design an activity where that situation occurs frequently so that they can experience doing this and having to do that, doing this and having to do that, doing this and having to do that? Because until they experience, or you design an activity for them to do this, then that, this, that, this, that, you waste your breath. Because you're telling, it's like you telling your kid, hey, look, you're going to get grounded if you don't go clean your room. You're going to get grounded. You're going to get grounded. But then the moment you sit on the couch and you watch him leave and you know the room is not clean and he walks back in the door and you go, hey, John, you're grounded. What do you? He'll remember that more than he will remember you constantly telling him you're going to be grounded. When he actually experiences the grounding, then he goes, I got to keep my room clean. So when they experience it, because I'm sure you've had that situation as a parent, or some of you may be on the field with players or in a classroom as a teacher, when they experience it, it's much more powerful than if you tell them. So you need to create this. And if you can do it within a, almost a, so that it happens naturally, then that's a little bit better for them than designing something that creates that unnaturally. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So this is what, these are the individual intentions you want to design an activity for, with all the ingredients of the game: direction, opponents, teammates, all the ingredients to make it a game. Communication, decision, execution. That's the challenge now.
So you're going to have a limited number of red players so that the blue team will get the ball. The red team's going to turn the ball over more because you have more blue players than you do red players.
Okay.
And in doing so, when that turnover happens, they're going to have more space on the field because there's not a whole bunch of red players on the field.
Okay. That's a good beginning point. Yeah, you're right.
So you're playing like a 6v2 or a 6v3 maybe?
And now we're starting to get into how you do it, right? So if you think about, and Bill talked about this on Monday, just briefly, but I want to go back to it because it's a key piece, this coach action reference. So what we have done is we've described a problem. We said, we want to get our players to understand their individual intention better. Correct? And then in the conversation, you guys joined at the tail end of the conversation, because that was basically the conversation we had with Chad. At the tail end of it, when you joined it, we were explaining the problem, basically the cause of it, the effect. The effect was players don't understand their individual intention. That was the effect, the result. The cause was partly because it's new, partly because it's past preferences, partly because it's also new for Chad and the Steamers coaches. So figuring out the best ways to teach it yet is still it's not as clear as we want it to be because it's still new. So that's the cause of all of this. All right. So then the solution, because understanding the description, the effect, understanding the cause logically gets us to what would be our coach action for deciding what to do. Yeah, the solution. The solution is, okay, if the players do not understand their individual intention, and part of the reason is their past preferences get in the way, then the logical solution is create situations, situation coach, a situation so that they can more repetitively experience those individual intentions to better decrease their initial preferences, which aren't very good or don't serve to achieve the team intention better, to better activate their new individual intention that would more positively contribute to the team intention. And the way we said we're going to do that, the solution is to situation coach. That's our deciding what, coach action deciding what. What we've moved into now is coach action deciding how to do it. And now the waters get a little muddied because you're thinking, Dan, when you think about this situation, you inevitably are starting to picture or imagine your own players, correct?
Correct.
And Chad is starting to imagine his Steamers white players, but they're two different players with different abilities and different inabilities. And Will might be sitting there going, okay, but I don't coach 9v9, I coach 4v4, and I want them to have these individual intentions, but how does this exactly look for me at 4v4? Because we've moved into the deciding how do we want to create these situations? Does all of that make sense?
Yep.
That's where the conversation could go in all these different directions. And that's the hardest piece to think about within a Zoom call like this. It would be much easier for us if we're just sitting here with you, Dan, or with Chad, or with Will, because then we only have one. But think about one of the references you had in creating this situation or designing this situation. You said, if you want to do it and be successful, you need more of what and less of what?
More blue players and less red players, right? So more
That-
offense, less defense.
That's going to be true for everybody. Yeah, that's something that's going to be true for everybody, even though you have, I think, Dan, you have is it the 11 Royal?
11 blue.
11 blue. You have 11 blue, but Chad goes, hey man, I don't have 11 blue. I have 11 white. My players can't do things as well as yours, but what you just said is standardized for everybody. Yeah, you want more of the blue players than the red players. Could there be anything else that may be true for everybody as we think about, or as you imagine these situations you would create?
I'm at a loss.
It's somewhat, and you'll probably go, well, I kind of assumed this or implied it, but is there, you said blue number 3, blue number 4, we have a blue center back 2, and then a blue right back 2. And again, this may be somewhat implied by the diagram, but if you just walk on the field, would you want to go 1, 2, 3, 4? Okay, you guys go blue, 1, 2, 3. Okay, you guys go red. Or do you want to be more thoughtful about who plays where?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you put players in the right positions, right?
Exactly. So when you design or create these situations, you're absolutely right. And it may not be perfect, but you want to get it as close to perfect or in those positions that they play as possible.
Yeah. I know who I'd put on the field. So
any other thoughts, guys? Will, Chad, did that make sense, even though it may not be exactly your team that we were talking about, and you may have different individual intentions for them? Did that make sense?
Yeah, I coach a 9v9 team as well, by the way.
Oh, well, then this does apply. This applies to you more than I thought it did. Perfect.
But switching the field may be more challenging than scoring a goal with that group. So,
Yeah.
So keep that in mind.
Now think about this, because this is one situation. You could also have a situation where, and this would probably happen in the situation coaching or the design of the activity you come up with, the blue right back number 2 is going to potentially win the ball also. Well, the individual intentions for this blue number 2 and blue number 4 and blue number 3, right? For blue 4 is very similar, whether the right back or the left back wins possession, but then it will also give you an opportunity to help blue 3 and blue 2 understand their individual intention if they're on the ball. Yeah, because her individual intention is, can I pass 2 players to get to the other side of the field or the other side of the circle? This blue player's individual intention is move wider to be a passing option. Yeah, but if blue right back number 2 wins it, her individual intention changes because now the individual intentions are swapped. They're just in reverse of each other. So it gives you an opportunity to talk about that. But this, as I said, is just one situation. You will have situations, and there are some similarities in positioning, but you have to think about what would this diagram look like if red 2 passes the ball in and blue 10 wins it. What would be the individual intentions of those other 8 field players? What would be the individual intention if blue 7 just steals it right away from red 2? What would the individual intention of blue 9 be? Blue 10, blue 8, what would their individual intentions be? And as you hear me say this, you might go, holy cow, this is like it goes on forever and ever. And it may feel that way, but as I said, there are similarities. There are similarities between. It's not as though you need to come up with a whole new individual intention for blue 3 when blue 2 wins the ball. There are almost mirror individual intentions of each other. There are also individual intentions that this player and this player will always have. If blue 3 wins the ball, and we've said this to, I think, the 11 and the 10 teams that we trained last week, yeah, they want to stand between players. That's kind of a positioning piece or a positioning characteristic. No matter what, they always want to stand in between players. If they can do that, great. So whether blue 3 wins it or blue 2 wins it, standing between players is something they really want to try and do. So that individual intention, yeah, position yourself between players. We also even mentioned positioning themselves behind players. Those things hold true no matter who wins the ball. And so as much as it sounds like, holy cow, you're talking, this would be like a full-time job, Mike, sitting here thinking about all these different situations. Yes, but there are, as I said, more similarities than what you think of as differences. You have anything to add, Bill?
Yeah, a few pop-ups as I was sitting here listening to this. So you have a 9v9 game going on right now, and you probably wouldn't have that many players at practice anyway. And you may if you combine some groups. So you have a 9, that's 18 players out there. So the left back has the ball, and now the area you're moving into with this age group is more communication, right? Better communication. Because once you begin to get with those higher numbers, and just as a number as a reference, about 8v8 to 11v11, and communication becomes more of an emphasis and a priority. So you have these players out here in this 9v9, and now, given their age group and their abilities and their inabilities, okay, what you are practicing here is not necessarily, you don't want to practice necessarily communication yet. You want them to be able to make decisions within their team and their individual intentions, okay? So Dan, the question becomes is, what numbers would you play with out there, okay, to make it more simplistic so that their decisions, they wouldn't have to communicate with their entire team. And we know that the defense is always a team that also communicates with you. They're sending signals to you with communication. They wouldn't be communicating what, given your abilities and inability players that you know, okay, and their age, what would you believe would be like an appropriate number to practice this with? And where would they be in those positions?
I would run 5 on the blue, and I'd have my back 4 and my holding midfielder, and then I would run probably 2 on the red team, and that would be probably a striker and an attacking midfielder.
Okay, and you feel that it would be appropriate for your team, right? That would not, would that be too easy for them? Would that be an underload? Or would?
I was going to say, if we're talking my team, it might be. So it might be 3 reds versus 5 blue. So you'd have your striker and your 2 attacking mids versus your 4 backs and my holding midfielder.
Okay.
So suddenly now we're 5v3, right?
Okay.
And then I'd
now
have the
you-
goalie in there too. So 6v3.
Then you have your holding midfielder, but remember your team intention was to switch the ball to the other side, right?
Yep.
And your holding midfielder may be able to do that, although I think it would be difficult for her. Okay. Would it be logical to maybe put another midfielder in there and have them play where that midfielder would then be able to move away and to get into that position where number 8 is right now, and to play them like they're shaped up right now. Because I believe you play with 3 in the midfield, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so if you had a holder and then you had 2 players higher, okay, or even 1 player higher, maybe, that may help with the ball being switched through the midfield instead of just playing the ball flat around,
Back to back.
around the back. Okay, so if you played, and I'm just throwing this out here, okay, if you played 6 on the attacking team, do you really need those forwards out there? Are they muddying the waters? Are they just requiring more decision making and more communication for your 6 blue?
You talking blue forwards?
Blue forwards.
talking-
I'm sorry, blue forwards.
Yeah, no, I don't need any. I don't need my striker out in the
So
field.
you don't even need them. So you have 6. You have 6 players out there on the blue team playing, and whether you thought they could play against 2 red forwards or they would play against 3, right? That's your call. I start wherever you feel is best. The game could either be 7, basically. It would be 4 backs, 2 midfielders, and a goalkeeper. That would be 7, and it would either be 7 versus 4 or 7 versus 5. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. And now you have to think about, okay, what can I do to simulate those forwards without those forwards just causing issues for us? What could you do to
You
simulate?
put a target goal up there.
Take a couple of those
Right.
small goals on the field and set
Yeah.
one on one side of the circle, set one on the other side of the circle. Because now when the players are passing, who are they? They're passing into the goals, and that's a simulation of those forwards, right? Without
Yeah.
having the forwards running all over the field, running around, trying to work. And now you're starting to try to coach everything, okay? And then because number 3 during the course of a game will never make the same pass twice. During the course of her career, she's probably, everything is going to be at least 6 inches different, okay, or an inch. So you wouldn't want to start the pass. You would probably, let me back up. It would probably be more logical to let the red team begin with the ball, right?
Right.
And let the red team, knowing that they're playing 7 versus 4, that most of the time they're probably going to lose the ball. And if they get a shot, so what? So what? So you could begin with your goalkeeper taking a goal kick as a start. This is just a thought out to number red 6 or 10, who would be maybe 10 yards away from your blue 10 and 8, and they would be able to receive it. And once they received it, then the game would be on, and the game would be on, and you would begin the play. Okay, knowing that the red now are going to lose the ball, and now the blue is going to win the ball. Sometimes 2 will win the ball. Sometimes three will win the ball. Sometimes your goalkeeper will win the ball. And even though your individual intentions are basically, they're basically similar, whether who has the ball. You're still, your back, your fullback on the weak side is going to begin to drift away. Your midfielder is going to be drift away, whether it's on your right or left. And then you just begin to watch it. You just begin to watch it and you observe it. And what you want to avoid is just coaching this, trying to coach the situation while they're playing. You just watch it and you let them play for 4, 5, 6 minutes. And then you could bring them in and then you could ask them some questions. Okay. Within you could describe what you saw. You could potentially explain why, if they weren't in this position or that position, why it became a problem for us. And then you could get them to agree. They're not going to disagree with you. You know, once you describe it and explain it, they're going to agree. Okay. And then you go back and you may talk to some individual players individually, and then you go back and you play again and you play again. If you have an assistant, what could the assistant do? What would be, instead of standing off to the side and watching you do all the coaching, how could the assistant help you?
And they're going to, there's a couple of choices, I guess. I mean, if I'm working on blue, right,
That's your
the
focus.
assistant could be working with red, because red's got something to learn too in this drill,
You
right?
absolutely.
We're not just going through motions with red. Red should be trying to do what we want to do from the offensive side.
And if red plays better, who does that help?
The blue, yeah.
The blue. Because if red plays better, it begins to start to overload the blue, right? And in order for them to be able to get it into those forwards up there and switch the ball to the other side of the field, then they begin to play better. And it's a gradual overload. And then maybe eventually, I'm not saying that practice, you get to a practice and you add a third forward in there, right? Because you want to keep them overloaded. You don't want blue to become underloaded where it's just easy for them. You do not want it to become easy for them, okay? But you don't want it to be something so difficult that they can never get it into those target goals, as you mentioned, out there. They would never be able to do that, okay? Another role your assistant could serve is you are just watching the back four and the goalkeeper, right? You're just watching the goal player and the back four. And he or she is just watching the midfield. And then when you come in, you could speak, describe what you saw at the back four. He could describe what he saw with the midfield. And that would kind of narrow things down for you. If you had a third assistant, then you know one could work with the red, one could work with the back four and the goal player, and another one could work with the midfield and watch them. And so you're using your assistants much more value than them just watching you do all the coaching. Okay, but I think that would be, I guess that you would feel that would be a good place to start with this, with 7 versus 4, or 7 versus 4, and just assess it from there. And then maybe you would move in. And eventually what you're going to build up to, you're going to build up closer and closer to your full game, right? You're just going to continue to build up closer to the full game.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, for myself and our particular team, I was looking more at the like 5v3 without those attacking mids or your striker. More for, I think one of the things we really need to work on is our holding midfielder actually holding, and our wing backs getting up the field in a timely fashion. So if I keep just the 5, then we play the ball to our holding midfielder. Now the wing backs have to get up the field because that's her option at that point, right? If we're looking to switch the field, because she doesn't have a attacking midfielder that's on the other side of the field. That was my initial thought of 5v3, but I get where you're coming from too, to have that extra target player. So we're going forward instead of around the back.
Okay. The best pass is potentially, not on every case, but just as a general theory, the best pass to make is the pass to the player that is closest to the opponent's goal.
Right. With what we're looking at, a pass to 7 is the best pass.
Let me finish this now, okay? Is the best pass to make is to the player closest to the opponent's goal, with that player, that receiving player, being able to carry out or make their next action. And their next action would be, they would be able to then be able to make a pass, okay? Or they would be, if they're in another part of the field, maybe they're able to play 1-against-1. Maybe they would be able to shoot, right? But that player then would have to be able to make their next action. So that puts a priority on not just a passer, because number 8, if she's up the field, right? Because you're playing 7 versus 4. She's one of your highest players, correct? So that would be, and the ball is on the left side and she's on the right side. She could be the best pass to make, right? Because you don't have forwards right now, okay? So she could be the best pass to make, but she has to get herself into a position where when she receives that pass, she's going to have to be able to make the next action. And the next action, if it was to pass, would be to put it in the goal, right? Just to put it into one of those small goals you have. And that if she didn't do that, if she got the ball and number 10 red was close enough to her to close her down, then what are you looking at then? You're looking at her what? What are you looking at? What would be a potential, what would probably be the problem for her? She didn't do what?
She didn't get enough space.
She didn't get in position. You're absolutely right. She stood too close to the defender. And even though 3 made the pass, the correct pass, the responsibility for her was to be able to carry out the next action once she received it, which would be able to pass it into the goal, or if you're playing 9, to be able to pass it into your forward. Okay. If she couldn't do that, then the feedback you get almost immediately is that I got to watch her positioning, right? And I got to watch her positioning. And then you have to come to the determination whether that positioning was just one time with her, or just happened twice, or is this a pattern with her? If this is a pattern with her, if she never gets into position, although 3 is making these great passes across the field all the time, and she never gets into position, okay, she's always getting a defender on her back, all right, then that you begin that coaching action. You describe to her what you saw, okay? You explain what the problem is. She agrees with it, and then you come to a solution with her.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. Is it 8's not getting enough space, but you put the caveat on it that 3 is making excellent passes across the field, and that was going to be my thing of, well, what if it's 3 that's not making a good pass, which is causing 8 to have the issues? But that's just, as long as you watch and you, is it 3 that's deficient, or is it 8 that's deficient, and then you address it that way? So
obviously, it's 3 that's making this not great pass. Maybe
stop passing the ball there, 3.
Maybe 7 times she makes a good pass, and then 1 time she doesn't. Then you just let it go, right? You just let it go. But if 3 has the ball 7 times, and 5 or 6 of those times she just tries to pass it into number 10, and number 10 gets defended against by number 6 and loses the ball, when your team intention is to get the ball to the other side of the field, then that same conversation. And what you look at with number 3 then is, what is the reason she can't make it? Because does she not have the ability to make this pass? And if she doesn't, is it something within her position and her moment direction or her speed? Does she need to get into a better position? All right. And maybe now you have to change your thinking a little bit, okay? Because you wanted her this place and she got the ball. Maybe if she had the ball and she got the ball, maybe because she was closed down, she may wind up going back to number what? To number 8, because she was shut down all the time. Maybe if number 8 had the ball, okay, for her to be coming to a better position would be for her to move out a bit wider. So you look at that and say, why can't she make this pass? Why can't she make this pass? And then you need to figure it out. And it could be something within her execution, right?
Right.
Maybe when she gets the ball, she's always turns and faces her own goal. Maybe she's never turned sideways. Maybe she is receiving the ball and she would be able to play on her next contact or so, but it takes her 3 or 4 to contact. And so there's a problem with her receiving. And then you begin to give her some soccer technical principles, okay? You begin to talk about that, and then you try to solve the problem with that.
It's about 8:24, just to kind of bring everything back together. So I want to go back to this for a minute, because as Bill was talking, I was reflecting in action, thinking about this. This is what we talked about. We said we want to download this reference from defending positions to attacking positions. What we are doing then is you are trying to help the players understand their deciding what to do better, their individual intention, deciding what individual intention they want to understand to get into these positions when we win it. Their individual intention, get into these positions to help the team. That's the individual intention. That's what they do. The piece that you need to think about, because players will begin to understand that fairly quickly. What they will really, really struggle with is, just imagine you are blue number 4. What they will begin to struggle with is when moving from that position that blue number 4 is in to this position. Now you're no longer talking about their individual intention. She understands I need to get there. What she has trouble understanding is the moment to get there, the direction in which to get there, and the speed in which to get there. She will understand that's the position I need to get in. Right? But she has trouble with, and we've talked about this, those space-time characteristics. Position, sometimes she will think she's in it, but she's not really in a good position. She could have created more space, or, oh, I understand I should take 5 steps back, but she does it at the wrong moment, or she does it in the wrong direction, meaning she was up here and now she begins to move back this way, and now number 9 goes there. Well, the direction that she moved in is incorrect because she's not a passing option any longer. So all of those things, that is how they do it. That's going to be the piece that you spend a lot of time coaching. That's the piece that takes a long time because they have preferences. This goes back to our conversation with Dan earlier. They have preferences. Some of their preferences are not even to get their, to achieve their individual intention. Once they get that preference, or they've learned that preference, they've understood that individual intention, then they will struggle with moving from this position to that position, moving from this position to that position, and moving back. Oh, blue 3 has it. She stumbled and tripped, and now red 7 won it back. Now we need to move back into this position. Yeah, think about blue number 2 for a minute. Moving from there to there, from here to there. There's a variety of different ways you can do it. You could run backwards. You can cross over. You could just turn and just sprint out there. Those are just ways to do it. She could do that on a completely horizontal line. Maybe she does it on a bit of a diagonal line moving toward goal. Maybe she does it on a diagonal line moving back to her own goal. Yeah. Maybe she waits a split second. Maybe those are all these space-time characteristics position, moment, direction, speed that Bill and I have talked about. Now, for Dan, for Will with his 9v9 team, those are game insight principles. Yeah, you're teaching them game insight principles. If this pass is going to be made from, and let me give you a concrete example. If this pass is going to be made from blue 3 to blue 8, and imagine blue 8 left-footed and right-footed, what would be if blue 8, for whatever reason, blue 8 doesn't create the space she should, and blue 3 says, I'm passing anyway? What would be the best foot if blue 8 is staring back at blue 3? What would be the best foot for blue 3 to pass to? Her right foot or blue 8's left foot?
Left,
Why?
because it's opposite the defender. And then she also opens up the field that she has an outlet pass to 2.
So
And
that's a game insight principle. Yeah, you pass to the protected side of where that defender is, not to her right foot. Now, if blue 8, because you might be thinking, well, what if blue 8's back then? Yeah, that changes the situation. Then blue 3, what would be the game insight principle that blue 3 could recognize now? Defender is far away. Now, maybe I do pass into blue 8's right foot so that she can just keep the attack moving forward. Game insight principle. So in this game, in this situation coaching, because the numbers allow you to do it, you are teaching players game insight principle. And that could almost passing so that blue 8, and Bill made this reference of soccer technique principles. A soccer technique principle for blue 8 may be in this situation. You can receive it across your body and go forward, and the way she receives it. So in this game, you could teach game insight principles. Zoom down or zoom in further when Bill and I were working with Will's 4v4 group, those little guys. No game insight principles. It's too much for them. Yeah. So what Bill and I did with Will's little guys, his 4v4 guys, how did we standardize positioning for them? Remember what I said? We just created those cones in a diamond, and those were the starting positions. Guess what principles we can download in the little 4v4 guys? Soccer technique principles. Yeah, because technique is important at that age, and that's what the numbers allow us to teach is technique. Yeah, their passing technique, their receiving technique. Yeah, allowing the ball to come across their body, things like that. Running, proper technique for running with the ball forward versus dribbling forward. Proper technique maybe when they're pressed and they have to protect the ball. Yeah, technique. Technique maybe a little bit in terms of creating some space once they win possession of the ball back. But the majority of those coaching points to those little guys is soccer technique principles. Yeah, that standing with the weight of their body on their toes so they're ready to move versus being flat-footed. Soccer technique principles. Yeah, could you teach those in this 9v9 game? Of course. And go back to Dan, what Bill was saying, as you become more and more knowledgeable about it and better with it, maybe you coach game insight principles and your assistant coach individually coaches soccer technique principles to the players. Another way to do it. So all of these things, they're all tied together.
All right, could I jump in with one question real quick?
Yeah.
Well, so maybe you could answer how you would approach this. But with a 9v9 or 11v11 group that lacks a lot of soccer technique principles, what's the approach first? You sort of say, okay, the soccer technique has to happen on your own time, and when we're here, it's decision making, or how do you sort of how do you approach that? If they need the soccer technique, they also definitely need the decision making.
Yeah. Go back to that reference that we've talked about, and some of you guys may remember this or remember it as I talk about it. The numbers you play, remember CDE. That's a soccer action. So if you think about it, the biggest enemy, right, you have this communication. Larger numbers allow you to coach communication. Yeah, because if you think about big games, if you just played 9v9, 11v11, that's a lot of information to collect. Everything is going on around them. You have the opponents, you have their teammates, you have upwards of 9 to 10 teammates to worry about, 9 to 10 opponents to worry about. So to be able to teach or coach overload communication, big games. But as you reduce the numbers, it becomes a little bit easier in terms of collecting that information. Why would it be a little bit easier as you reduce the numbers?
There's less people to communicate with.
Exactly. So with less numbers, now somewhere around probably 7v7 to 5v5, you can, if there's less numbers, then the communication is a little bit more simplified, like you said, and now you can begin to overload decision making. In order to zoom in even further and overload technique or the execution of a technique, right, then you reduce the numbers even more, because once I reduce those numbers, Will, even in 7v7, you don't want to be doing this, because if I'm doing this, then you're not able to overload technique. You're overloading communication. When they're constantly looking around to see where their teammates are, yeah, then you're overloading communication. You said simplify it by reducing the numbers, and now you can zoom in on overloading decision making. If you reduce the numbers even more and think about when we've played 4v4, what have we usually done in games of 4v4? We've put cones where?
In the diamond shape to
Yeah.
show their positions.
And for players to start at those cones.
Right.
Why would having those players start at those cones, and they can go off those cones a little bit with the little guys, they really went off those cones, but why would restricting them to only maybe a yard, maybe 2 or 3 steps off those cones, why would that help? Why would that help the decision-making process?
Oh, it limits the amount of choices they have.
And they don't have to wonder where their teammates are. They know for the most part where they are. So we've simplified communication by reducing the numbers. We've simplified the decision-making by somewhat, not totally, but restricting some of the actions or the areas that they can go in. And now restricting that allows us to overload what? Technique. Because now all they really have to worry about, they know where their teammates are. And now they're able to really, or you as a coach are able to zoom in on that technique. So what you said is, well, I got some players that they struggle to pass and receive or shoot or whatever that technique is. And on top of it, we have issues with game insight. Well, if communication struggles, that's also going to have a snowball effect with decision making, correct? If the decision making struggles, that's going to impact the execution of that decision. That doesn't necessarily mean start at the bottom and work up, although that's what you would do with a young player. But now you have some older players that struggle with the execution of technique, which also we know then impacts their ability to properly make decisions. So a couple of options you could just have a part of your practice or an entire practice dedicated to the execution of the decision, simple numbers, smaller numbers. And that may mean for you, Will, and this is what we talked about with Chad, not knowing those players, maybe that space needs to be, and I'm just making this up, maybe that space, that diamond needs to be 10 yards from each cone. Or maybe you go, No, that's probably not enough. Maybe it needs to be 15 yards from each cone. Maybe it needs to be 4v1 versus 4v2, or maybe they could play 4v2. So you could have a practice dedicated like that, totally to execution of a decision. Maybe one part of your practice, a percentage of it is, maybe the beginning is this passing game where it's the execution of technique, and then you move more into D, or the decision making piece of it, adding a few more numbers to it with that 9v9 group. Or once they've got, if you have an assistant, maybe you work on, like we talked about with Dan, maybe you work on the D, the decision making, the game insight, and your assistant, once players know or have a clearer understanding of their individual intention, what they should be doing, then you keep your eye at that level, at the D level, and your assistant coach can walk around individually and provide them E, or football technique principles. You know, maybe this player here as 4 always gets into that position, and you notice that. You're the D coach, and you're going, yeah, 4 is pretty good. 4 does that pretty good. And now you could tell your assistant, hey, 4 gets into that position really well, but when 4 receives the pass from 3, this pass, she always receives it with her left foot. And that limits her from going to the opposite side of the field, or it limits her from maybe making this pass into blue number 8. So maybe your assistant, you keep your eye at the D level, and your assistant can then individually coach her or another player on football tech. Yeah, you want to let the ball come across your body, or you want to receive it. Maybe she likes to receive it with the outside of her. Take it with the outside of her foot and then pass with the inside of your right foot. Whatever that is, that's another option to look at it.
All right.
Okay.
Well, this is good information. It's perfect conversation. And I think we can probably pick up maybe even tomorrow night, because it's probably going to be rained out again. So the one good thing about all this rain is we get an opportunity to bring the coaches together and have a conversation like this. It's perfect for setting up training for next week. So appreciate everybody's time. Get back to your families. And if we do another Zoom call tomorrow, I'll try to send it out earlier, and so everybody can be prepared. So appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.